So you're
Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends, welcome to the OR Tambo School of Leadership Public Dialogues. These dialogues have been going on from 2023, but unfortunately there was a pause in between due to some internal issues at the school, as well as other political developments within the ANC. As the school, we are proud and happy to resume the dialogues again. As you all know that, in fact, the country is in a state of discussing about the many challenges that are facing us. And it's important that we engage in that in those discourses, particularly in light of the national dialogue, which commenced with a convention at UNISA in August. But it's also important that in those discussions and that discourse, we not only move from a point of lamenting and pointing out to the challenges and analyzing them. We need to also ensure that we talk about the good things that are happening and also how to seize the challenges that this epoch, this moment presents. I think in every moment, in every epoch, there are both opportunities and challenges. There are opportunities for us as the people of South Africa. There's opportunities for us as the continent. There's opportunities for us as the global South and the world in general. But particularly, there's also opportunities for the ANC and its liberation movement to renew itself, to evolve into a better movement that can be entrusted with our historical responsibility and our historical mission to create a better life for all. And that's why today we'll be engaging as we resume these public dialogues on the question of the economy. You'd all be aware that in the last NEC meeting of the ANC, in his closing remarks, President Cyril Ramaphosa announced an economic plan, a 10-point plan of how to accelerate economic growth, how to set us up on a path of enhanced economic recovery. We'd all know that our economy has been stagnating for quite some time, and there are many factors that result in that stagnation, both objective and subjective. And that's why we thought it's important to actually commence and resume our public dialogues by discussing this important issue. And there's no better person to take us through that plan and to at least delve a bit more into the economic plan than Comrade Zuko Godlimpi, who is the head of the Economic Transformation Committee of the ANC. who is also the Deputy Minister deployed by the ANC in the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. He has many accolades under his belt. So I'm not going to waste time, comrades, going through his bio. I'm just going to hand over to him now to take us through the presentation on the economic plan that was presented by the president so that we can engage with it. It's important to say, comrades, as we call him to begin his presentation, that comrades must also participate by engaging in the chat room, by also noting down whatever that is going to present, because we want to ensure that this discussion not only ends here, but also is a discussion that goes down to structures, to different organizations, so that when we are asked difficult questions around the economy, we can be able to respond to them, drawing on the wisdom that we would have encountered today. And of course, after his presentation, we'll open up for a discussion. And it's important, comrades, that before we even get to that point of a discussion, comrades ensure that they have named their gadgets accordingly. Sometimes when you enter a meeting, you find that your gadget is, or your username is named to your gadget. You find that it says iPhone or whatever phone that you're using. Please note that when you get to the discussion, if your phone is named like that or your profile is named like that, we will not recognize your name. So it's important that during the presentation, you ensure that your user profile is named accordingly. And then lastly is to say, comrades, please invite other comrades, share the link with them so that they can benefit from today's presentation. So without wasting any more time, I'm going to invite Comrade Zuko Godlimpi to give us his presentation. Comrade Zuko, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Comrade Kifensi. I've already taken over your work. I keep on admitting people here because it shows on my side that people are on the waiting room. I firstly, before I start, I will state that I'm going to be making a PowerPoint presentation, and that PowerPoint presentation will also then be followed by me beaming two other documents that will serve the purpose of demonstrating that, contrary to what some critics have said since the president address last week, this is not a wish list. It's an action plan. That's the first one. The second one is, the point must be noted that this is not a new economic plan. It doesn't replace the NDP, it doesn't replace the medium-term development plan. It doesn't replace anything. What it aims to do is to concretely express how are they going to be realized, these ideals. And this is in part because, being self-critical, we've realized that the ANC has been good in projecting what needs to be done, in projecting how growth could be realized, how employment could be realized, how transformation could be realized, how macroeconomic stability could be achieved, and so on. But it has been quite poor.
Sorry, Comrade Zuko. I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you can get your screen to a full screen because
that's not my screen showing. I was worried as to who exactly is that.
Oh, okay.
So
I think
let me share my screen.
Please share your screen.
I hope it's visible.
It's
You're
not
not seeing
shared
anything?
yet. Or not yet, Comrade Zulu.
Okay, give me this. Start sharing.
Yeah.
Share. Screen.
Yeah, there we go. But it seems like you are sharing your exact screen. Maybe you might want to share the
Yeah,
window.
I was testing first, just so that. Okay. Is it clear now?
Yeah. Now we are good.
Very well. Thank you very much. So as I was explaining, we are trying to bring a framework for the ANC to actually concretely express its ideas in action. But I will start off by giving this PowerPoint presentation, which on its part, it explains the politics behind the action plan and how does it relate to ANC conference resolutions. So the starting point on context is that the 55th National Conference insisted that we must reaffirm the historic task of the ANC, which is to transform South Africa's political economy so that it serves the people and secures national sovereignty through industrialization and inclusive ownership. But for context as well, is to note that this mission is now confronting a much more complex terrain. The first one is that we have a fragmented political landscape following the loss of a majority by the ANC in the 2024 elections. And this has major implications for how we approach the delivery of the action plan. The second one is that we've had a sustained period of weak growth and a deterioration of South Africa's industrial competitiveness. This as well is an important point to note because we'll return to it. The third one is that the global economy is undergoing technological and geopolitical realignment. So we now know that since the election of President Trump, the competition between China and the US has escalated, but that has also brought with it the rolling out of tariffs across the globe, which have disrupted the global economy and trade. Now, what that tells us is that the international political economy is at a turning point. Although the world, since at least 1991, has been dominated by a particular worldview and how to organize economics and the economy. And that has been dominated by the politics of the United States and its ideological imagination about how the world must look like. And that era was called the era of globalization. The idea was that the world is now being integrated into one single village on the basis of the principles of liberalism or neoliberalism, as other critics would articulate. But that has come to an end now. Of course, its ending point actually was the 2008 financial crisis. And since then, there's been an attempt by the US and other major countries to recover their pre-2008 growth, but that has not worked out. And one of the things that they are trying to do now, because they've been overtaken by China, they are trying to reclaim their lost power by bringing back industrial policy. So one of the things that are happening is that the great powers are reindustrializing their economies behind protective walls, and that includes massive subsidies for their domestic industry. And trade is now being weaponized, as we see through the tariffs that President Trump has rolled out across the world. Now, of course, this global reconfiguration of production and power is not neutral. It determines who industrializes, who trades, and who remains dependent. Essentially, what the Trump tariffs are trying to do is to do something called the reshoring. What does it mean? It means the United States is trying to pull back all American industrial companies that since 1960 or so have been moving out of the United States in search of cheap labor across the world. What that has done is that as they've gone out to seek for cheap labor and more efficient labor markets elsewhere in the world, it has created a social destabilization in the United States. So people in the United States who have only the equivalent of matric in South Africa, used to be able to get jobs in the United States and basically build families and buy suburban houses and so on. But that has completely died over the last 40 years. And their argument is that it's because American capital has moved across the world into especially Asia. So the tariffs are designed actually to bring back American firms into the United States. As part of this exercise, this is how you must understand the entire notion of America First. That doctrine is about industrial protectionism and targeting Asian countries that have outpaced the United States over time. Now, part of that problem is that the United States is now pulling out of multilateralism. So since World War II, everything you see in the world, the so-called Bretton Woods institutions, the WTO, the World Bank, the IMF, and so on, including the WTO later on, were supposed to be these global institutions alongside the United Nations that must govern global politics and global economics. And the United States was the principal backer of these institutions. But the US is abandoning all of those institutions now in favor of its self-interest and defending itself against what it calls unfair competition. Yes, the presentation will be made available after here, Comrade. So that is the context that I'm laying down, that geopolitically, this is the terrain in which we're operating. And we have to think strategically about how South Africa builds its competitiveness there, and how the ANC specifically approaches the question of rebuilding the South African economy, especially its industrial profile. Now, on the domestic front, there are variables that all of us should at least be familiar with. The first one is that in South Africa, over the last 5 years at least, GDP growth has averaged about 0.8%. And the investment rate in South Africa has remained stuck below 17%. And that shifted, so we had about a 7% fall in the rate of investment in our economy since 2008. And the public debt has grown to about 74% of GDP in 2024. And unemployment remains stubbornly high. We all know that. Now, of course, inflation is now stabilized within the target range, between the 3 to 6% range. But the major macroeconomic problem is that even though inflation is stabilized, credit is still very expensive, which means although inflation is under control, the amount of credit extension to the private sector is marginally low in South Africa, and in part contributes to those low levels of the investment rate that is at 17%. To understand this, for our economy to grow properly, we need the investment rate to be at about 25% of GDP. So we are basically 8% below where we should be in terms of the scale of investment in the economy. Now, what are the structural bottlenecks that are explained as the basis of this low growth problem? The first one is that we had an energy problem for many years in South Africa. Energy insecurity through two things. We had load shedding for the longest time because, well, we're not producing enough power that the economy needed. But the second one that is currently at play is that we have a cost escalation problem. Electricity is now expensive, both for households and for businesses. So if you think about production costs, or if you think about your household as well, part of what you as a person are spending a lot on these days for your monthly costs, which frustrates all of us, especially the middle class, is electricity. Now, think about that in the context of people who are running businesses as well, who are running factories that consume a lot of electricity. It means one of their major cost drivers now in their production costs is the cost of electricity. So that's what energy insecurity here means. The second one is the problem of the freight and logistics collapse. We know the problems that have been plaguing Transnet. So a lot of stuff in South Africa is moved through roads as opposed to being moved through rail. Now, rail, when it is efficient, it is faster, it is more reliable. Now, we know trucks, they cause a lot of traffic on the road, and they take about 2 or 3 days to arrive in a destination and so on. So all of that slows down the economy. On skills and institutional capacity, we are not making the point about the so-called labor market skills problem per se. No, we're talking about skills and institutional capacity on project management and project delivery in the economy. Then the other one is on concentration of ownership. Then the fifth one is a perennial problem of a weak coordination between fiscal, monetary, and industrial policy in South Africa. So you end up being stuck in a counterproductive austerity regime, which stifles productive investment by the public sector. So because we've been scaling down on public expenditure, that 17% I was talking about, this 17% investment rate that is at 17%, it is a problem of two elements of poor investment levels, both by the public sector and by the private sector. So if the public sector spends more on infrastructure, so if you had a more efficient Eskom, a more efficient Transnet, a more efficient Dinel, a more efficient this and the other in terms of their investment allocation, and then you had a private sector that was also more efficient in its allocation towards productive investment and less on financialization, that number bumps up to about 25%, and then you start to see a lot of job creation in the economy. Now, we come to the problems of the industrial performance that we're trying to attend to. South Africa's manufacturing share of GDP fell from 19% by the year 2000 to about 13% now in 2024. So when you think about the South Africa's economic output, growth that is coming from manufacturing activity has been declining over the past 24 years. If you listen to the statistician general when he tables information about the performance of the economy, the tendency is to see that the financial services sector and the government sector and so on are the largest drivers of economic growth. And the ones that are more, and then the services sector, of course, in retail and. The sectors of the economy that have the highest jobs multiplier in agriculture, in manufacturing, they have been having a declining share of GDP. Now, in part, how is this explained? Exports remain commodity heavy. So we know that 81% of minerals are exported raw out of South Africa with very limited beneficiation. Now, when you are exporting 100 tons of manganese or chrome, you are essentially, theoretically, exporting a particular amount of potential jobs that could be built on the downstream sectors, which means if we were to take not 81% of minerals being exported, if we were to take about 21% of that which we're exporting and turn it into domestic beneficiation, there's a particular number of jobs that could be realized through that. And then that share of GDP that is at 19% on the part of manufacturing could potentially start moving upward to about 22% and. Now, the other problem we have is that the South African manufacturing sector has also been relying a lot on the automotive sector. In East London, Port Elizabeth, Tshwane, Durban, and so on. We know the story of Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Toyota, Ford, etc. But there is a problem globally. The automotive sector is facing a transition from what is the internal combustion engine, so the diesel and petrol powered cars, to new electric vehicles and hybrids. So it's the ones that are fully electricity based and the ones that use both electricity and petroleum or gases. Now, these shifts in technology and production have disrupted our local industry, but not just in South Africa. Some of the big car makers in the world, your BMWs and so on, have had something above 60% decline in sales volumes across the world. So very few people are buying the traditional cars, and they are buying the cheaper ones that are mostly coming from China. Now, the fourth point is that South Africa's competitive industrial performance has fallen. So the United Nations Industrial Development Organization has something that is called the Competitive Industrial Performance Index, which ranks countries on the basis of something that is called the manufacturing value added per capita. That is the amount of output per person in the manufacturing sector in that country. So South Africa in the earlier period used to be around 25% ranked globally, and it is now sitting at 55%. Importantly, it ranks lower than Morocco and Egypt. And that's what we're trying to respond to with this action plan, all this that I've explained. Now the question arises, what is the political and theoretical basis of this in the context of ANC policy? Now, all of this is based on what the conference resolutions of 2022 said. The first one is that conference told us that as a priority for this term, we must focus on reindustrialization and productive diversification so that manufacturing becomes the engine of growth and job creation. The second one was on transformation and ownership and control. The third one was that we need to return to building a capable ethical developmental state with the capacity to plan, the capacity to coordinate all social efforts in the economy, and the technical ability to deliver with discipline and accountability. It is probably this third area that justifies or motivates why we've taken the direction of this economic action plan, because we have to demonstrate the ability to plan, to coordinate, and the discipline to execute successfully. The fourth one is on the just energy transition, guaranteeing energy security while advancing green industrial capacity. Now, I must explain this fourth point because there's a tendency of viewing it purely on the basis of domestic dynamics. I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. Think about the just energy transition, the issue of whether South Africa should have renewable energy as part of its energy mix or not. Now, if we go back to what I said earlier, I said great powers are reindustrializing behind protective walls, subsidizing domestic industries, and weaponizing trade policy. That's the third point there. What are we talking about? The European Union, which is one of South Africa's major trading partners, and I want you to understand this, that we're already under siege across the Atlantic from the United States through the tariff regime. But we're facing a similar headwind from Europe, which is our major trading partner, and the UK. They're introducing something that is called carbon border adjustment mechanisms or measures. It's called CBAM. What is that about? Essentially, they are saying goods that enter the European Union must be goods that are produced with less carbon emitting energy generation. So, which means part of what is now going to be assessed before goods are allowed to enter that market is whether the source of energy used in producing the goods, is it compliant with their green policy? The transportation of those goods, was it through vessels that are powered only through oil and whatever, or are they powered through green whatever? Now, of course, they are making the point that this is only climate justice policy. But in reality, it is actually industrial policy. So, of course, their target is to prevent Chinese goods from dominating that market. But because it's applied indiscriminately, it ends up affecting all of us, including countries such as South Africa. So by January next year, South Africa faces the possibility of having its exports into the European Union being prevented from entering the market, minus the exemptions that we're still negotiating, if it does not demonstrate a just energy framework. So I thought I must explain it like that. So the fifth point is on continental and global solidarity. That is on leveraging the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, BRICS Plus, and the South-to-South cooperation as part of our market diversification strategy to rely less on the traditional markets in the US and in Europe and so on. But of course, there are discontents on that note as well. The ETC will be running an international trade policy seminar very soon to partly address this thing that it's not as easy to change gear and say, I was producing goods for market X. Market X no longer wants me. I'm therefore just going to shift those products to market B. It doesn't work neat like that because different markets have different purchasing power capabilities, which means they their demand for goods differs from market to market. So one market, so let's take the United States, for instance. The United States buys a lot of South African-built yachts. You know, yachts, the expensive boats. Now, if the US no longer buys those yachts, it doesn't mean you're just going to turn around and say, China, buy these yachts. You don't have a consumer class in China that buys yachts. You have it in the US, which means you potentially will have to try go to the Gulf countries and say, in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and so on, is there a large enough number of millionaires and billionaires who could have the appetite to buy South African yachts? You might find them, but the dynamic might be, if you were able to sell 50 yachts to the United States per annum, you might only be able to sell 15 yachts to the UAE because there might just be only 15 people with that kind of appetite. So that process of diversification is a very complex and complicated one. So as I've explained, the economic transformation framework from conference rests on 5 pillars, some of which have been expressed there. The pillar of color is energy security and the just transition. The second one is industrialization and trade expansion. The third one is infrastructure and logistics reform. The fourth one is on financial sector and development finance institution alignment. The fifth one is on land, agriculture, and food security. Those are the 5 major pillars that conference gave us in 2022. And I've already explained what they are about. I won't repeat the energy security issue. I've already explained what that is, but conference gives a bit of detail on what should be done. You can go and read the conference resolutions. They're available online, but you can also email them to you. It's about 13 pages of the economic transformation sub commission. Yeah, it's a 13-page thing, so we'll send it to you as well. Pillar 2 is on industrialization and trade expansion. I won't get into that detail. Pillar 3 is on infrastructure and logistics reform. I'm not going to venture into that, but it was about modernizing Eskom, Transnet, PRASA, Sanral, and improve overall project management. It was about promoting local manufacturing and construction and rail components. It's about strengthening municipal infrastructure planning for inclusive local development. The fourth pillar is on financial sector and DFI alignment. The conference said, we must align DFIs under a National Development Finance Coordination Council chaired by the Presidency. Create a public investment compact to crowd in pension and insurance funds. Reform DFI governance for developmental impact and transparency. Establish a state bank to extend affordable productive credit. Now, you will see when I read later that there will be something about a National Economic Coordinating Council and a war room, economic war room in the Presidency, which people have been criticizing. But there's logic to that, and I'll explain what are we trying to do. The fifth one was, of course, on completing land reform with productive utilization, establishing agro-industrial parks, and then having value chain financing in those, promoting climate-smart agriculture and food sovereignty. Now, this is the actual action plan now, the one that has 10 things. The first one is on electricity tariffs and transmission infrastructure. What is the strategic vulnerability that we're trying to solve for? It's rising administered prices and create bottlenecks that are eroding competitiveness in beneficiation industries. So it's become very expensive in South Africa to run factories that are producing high energy reliant goods. So ferrochrome, manganese, and steel, they face closure risks. I know many of you know that. In fact, you might not know, we've lost about 14 smelters in South Africa in the recent period. And the aggregate number of jobs that have been lost over time in the smelting industry, it's 350,000 jobs that have been lost. Now, the proposed action is to implement preferential tariffs for ferrochrome, manganese, and steel. The other one is to fast-track transmission development plan on the 14,000 kilometers of new power lines, then to ring-fence local procurement in grid build. So when we're building the 14,500 kilometer lines, we want to be using locally generated steel. But one of the things that we have to do to get that right is to try lower the price of electricity for the smelter factory. Now, Comrade Sputla very soon will be announcing the action that we have taken on that. Cabinet already took a decision that we must try to drop the price of electricity per kilowatt hour from 2 rands, 3 cents to about 78 cents or lower. Why is that? The reason is The South African steel industry is facing competition from steel that is coming from China, from Mongolia, and elsewhere. And one of their major areas of being competitive against South Africa is their price of electricity. So a case in point, in South Africa, the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour is 2.03 cents, as I was saying. In China, it is about 50 cents. Now imagine a person running a factory that consumes nothing less than 100,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. It means in China, it will be 100,000 times 0.5 cents. So it will be almost like 50,000 rands. And then in South Africa, at 2 rands, 3 cents, it will be almost like 200,030 rands. So that's the difference in the cost of running these things, which undermines our competitiveness. Now, on the strategic mandate, we outline the ANC manifesto and the resolutions. We then outline the responsibility there on the right. So that this is for Eskom, the Department of Energy and Electricity, National Treasury, the DTIC, and the Development Bank of Southern Africa. Then we do the same on freight logistics. I'm not going to venture into the detail of each and every one of them because you will be able to read these on your own. But the president read them out as well. I'm sure people are quite familiar. The second one is on freight logistics. And the strategic vulnerability, which is the important point that I hope comrades and South Africans will pay attention to, is rail and port collapse caused 86 billion rands in lost mineral exports and 5% of GDP loss. And investor confidence is eroding. So we have to solve that problem if we are to rescue 86 billion rands in export value and that 5% of GDP that is lost over time. Now, as I was explaining on the electricity tariffs about the smelters, point 3 is specifically about chrome and manganese, which are the main sources of manufacturing steel in South Africa. As we had said, 81% of our mineral exports are still raw. Now, we proposed that there must be export controls on that front. But don't read this in isolation. Read it together with intervention 1. Because our critics make the argument that it does not solve your problems if you simply introduce an export control measure to reduce the export of chrome and so on, because the other major cost driver is the price of electricity. So we are combining them. We are lowering the price of electricity for smelters. We are then reducing that 81% of mineral exports so that once the price of electricity has been lowered for smelters, they might have sufficient feedstock domestically to run those smelters and produce the steel we need, and they must produce it cheaply. Now, some of you might have noticed that on Friday, the 3rd of October, the Minister of Trade and Industry issued a gazette calling for public comments on this very question on export controls. Now, when people say this action plan is a wish list, they are not paying attention to what is actually happening. So on the first one, Cabinet already took a decision on this one, on electricity tariffs, that the Minister of Electricity and Energy and Electricity must go ahead publishing or negotiating that tariff price with those smelters, and that process is in action. The freight logistics recovery plan is already in action. The Minister of Transport is busy with that. On the 3rd of October, on point 3, the Minister of Trade and Industry issued a gazette calling for public comments on chrome exports. So the action plan is already being rolled out. Then the 4th one is on state project management capacity. Now we all know the Minister of Finance announced above 1 trillion rands in infrastructure allocation in the last budget. But the biggest problem we have is project management capacity in the state. The time we waste between the announcement of a budget and the actual translation of that budget into impact on the ground is one of the most frustrating things that we are doing. So it's part of that inability of the state to plan and to execute properly. So this is what the action plan is focusing on. Then the 5th weakness is local government, especially the local economic development function and the infrastructure investment part. That's another area of major weakness that we are dealing with, and we are going to focus on in this action plan. The sixth one is on labor activation initiatives and public employment initiatives. You all know that there was a storm last week or so between the Department of Labor and the Department of Basic Education on what are they called, EAs or something, education assistants and so on. There are problems with EPWP and so on. So we are trying to find a mechanism to coordinate all of these public employment programs in the state so that we could expand access to employment opportunities on the ground. The seventh issue we know from many research studies is the SMME failure rate. South Africa's growth must be driven by a high output on the part of SMMEs. So part of the problems we have is fragmentation in the execution of mandates by development finance institutions in supporting DFIs. And so part of that is in the action plan. It is that thing I was talking about that we said must be hosted in the presidents. The eighth one is on provincial growth and industrial parks. A lot of people have complained about the history of industrial parks where people come from. Those of the Eastern Cape will tell you about Timbaza, about Etuwa. Those of Gauteng will tell you about Bebelegi, and so on. So we're trying to revitalize those industrial parks, but we're trying to revitalize them through provincial growth strategies because the old model that kept them alive is no longer working. Those of KZN might have seen me a couple of times this year. I've gone to 3 industrial parks in KZN. I've gone to Eastebe. I've gone to in Newcastle, and I also went to Ladysmith visiting those industrial parks and so on. Then the ninth area is on the US tariff and CBAM responses. I was explaining that the pressure that the South African export strategy is facing is both from the US and Europe. So there's work that is being done, including negotiating with the United States, negotiating with the European Union for exemptions, but also expanding our exports under the AfCFTA, BRICS, and so on, and also then deploying trade remedies such as safeguards and anti-dumping regulations, and then develop emergency industrial support package for those subsectors of the economy that are the most affected by the tariffs. The 10th and last one is the budget strategy and macroeconomic coordination. As I was explaining before, on the 5 strategic constraints, I said one of the problems we've had in South Africa is that there's been no proper alignment of monetary, fiscal, and trade policies. So you almost have the DTIC historically doing its own work on industrial policy, and the National Treasury imagining macroeconomic policy in a different route altogether. So where you need fiscal and monetary support for industrial policy, it would not always be coming. So we're focusing now on that on that as well as the 10th one. So these are the 10 focal areas. Now, before I stop speaking, I'm going to now show you the implementation framework for this, because people have been saying it's a grocery shopping list. It's not true. But the president was not going to stand on television closing a National Executive Committee meeting and start reading a performance scorecard. It would not have worked. I would have been an upset it. But I'll show you now what we've produced at the back of this. Just give me a second. Now, this is what the actual economic action plan and full delivery performance report card looks like. We've disaggregated the action plan into the short term, the medium term, and the long term. Our short term starts from now in October to March next year, so it's a 6-month period. The medium term starts from April 2026 to September 2027, and we explain. So the short term, it's immediate policy activation and the groundwork that must be done and early outputs. Now, if you come to what it looks like, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I just wanted to show you in this platform what exactly are we talking about. On electricity tariffs and transmission reform, what is the goal? It's the draft preferential tariffs and initiate fast-track lane for the transmission development plan. Who's the lead agency? ESCOM, Department of Energy and Electricity, National Treasury, DPSA, and so on. What are the key outputs and indicators? tariff must be gazetted. The 14,500 kilometer transmission plan must be initiated in the next 6 months. That's what I'm trying to show you. The milestone will be a preferential tariff being published. On the chrome and manganese tariffs, as I was saying, the third line, what is the goal? The goal is to eventually have a gazetted export tariffs and anti-dumping cases. Who is the lead agent? It's the DTIC, it's ITEC, it's DMRE, it's the ITC. What are the key output indicators? It's tariff notices issued. As I was saying to you, we've already issued the gazette on the 3rd of October. That's the starting point. Once we receive public comments and we finalize that, we will then issue a gazette that is announcing those tariffs and so on. So that's the kind of work that we're talking about. When I was speaking about project management capacity, what was I talking about? The goal is to certify project management CADA program. Now, the CADA here in question, it's not the one that is routinely insulted. It's basically professional. Which one is the lead agency? Department of Public Works, DPSA, National Treasury, and so on. In 6 months' time, what we want to have a CADA charter that is signed and a training initiated. Of course, this will be done. Essentially, the idea is to have collaboration between the National School of Government and particular universities and engineering institutes that can help us with this thing, and project management institutes. So that's what I'm saying. Now, the milestones achieved would be to have 200 project managers trained who are working within the state, but that includes in local government and provinces. It's not a national government thing on its own. On the local government and LED and infrastructure thing, one of the problems that we've picked up is that we are very weak at that level, both on engineering services for infrastructure and the LEDs. So in the next 6 months, we want to target up like 5 pilot municipalities to start this thing out and see, do an assessment. Of course, the information of these weaknesses exists already. The AG gives us these reports all the time. Municipalities themselves have all of these things and so on. So this is the kind of thing that we'll be doing. Now I'm done showing you this one. I'll show you the last template so that you get the sense of the work that we are doing. Now, this is the full scale of this thing. Now, one of our critics, a comrade of ours, says after the president speaks, the NEC of the ANC speaking about this, that, and the other, but none of them are engineers. They know nothing about what they're talking about, blah, blah, blah. It's a grocery shopping list. Again, it's not true. But the president was not going to read this thing. You can see now on the screen, it's too much detailed information. The president was still going to publish this on a live platform for the ANC. But I just want to show you the amount of work that we've done. So we have a decision category, we have a decision area, we have a decision description, we have a rationale for this and how it links to policy. We know the entity that must be responsible. We know the timeline. The timeline is over a 5-year period, it's 30 years. But as I had shown you before, it's broken down to short, medium, and long term. The impact estimation, we've also done it. We know that by sorting the energy and industrial policy thing just on its own, by stabilizing the electricity sector, you are rescuing about 1.5% of GDP by 2028. So when we say we're targeting a 3.5% growth rate over the medium term, we're not dreaming. We've done the estimation. And just at the back of this, when you do the green energy, the 5 gigawatts on green energy, we've estimated 10,000 jobs that could be realized here. And we've also done key risks and mitigation measures. We know, for instance, that part of the risks we have on what I was talking about on implementing the preferential tariffs is a tariff distortion problem, where those who are working in the sectors where the tariffs are being rolled out, they might start engaging in rent-seeking behavior in order to distort the tariffs. But the risk mitigation that we've already worked on as well is to have a phased rollout, but also a phasing out of the tariffs once their policy objectives have been realized over the 5-year period, right? And the monitoring KPI will be energy reliability index and so on. What is the status? Draft tariff policy is pending, because I did say the comrades Putha and the Minister of Energy and Electricity are working on that. If you come to number 3 on the industrialization, when we speak about chrome and manganese tariffs, we say the description is to have export tariffs plus anti-dumping measures to defend beneficiation, because part of what we must do is to deploy anti-dumping measures to protect the South African economy from cheap, underpriced steel coming from outside the borders. That could be from Zimbabwe, from China, from wherever across the world. So we'll have that. What is the rationale for this? It's for beneficiation and diversification of output, as we had said. What is the responsible agency? DTIC, ITEC, as I've explained in the other one. What is the impact estimation? We are trying to improve South Africa's manufacturing value added index by 10% and improve our export diversity by 15% from the current baseline. What are the key risks that are facing this thing? Is a World Trade Organization challenge, because we know that tariffs are regulated by the WTO. So part of what we've had to do is to model what level of tariffs or what level of export control are you going for? Is it an export tax? Is it a quantity control? And what elements of WTO laws does it violate? So that we can start de-risking. And then what is the mitigation measure? Is a phased tariff alignment and AFCFTA buffering. And then the monitoring is the beneficiation scorecard. Then there on the last one, we have a tariff gazette drafted. And as I was explaining to you, we've already issued a gazette that is calling for public comments on this thing. So it runs through all of them. You see? Now, all of these things, all of them here on the economic action plan, on this register, it's 20 key decision areas. It goes all the way to number 20. That number 20 includes specific tasks for the ANC as well. So if you look at number 19 on monitoring and governance, there's going to be ETC scorecards, that's on the ANC side, and quarterly war room reviews, that's on the side of the president, because you said there's going to have to be that war room. Now, people, when they hear the words war room, they I don't know what they think we're talking about. But those who are old enough to remember how the presidency was structured, the proposal is really to revive what is the old PCAS and then consolidate many of the functions that are playing out in the presidency, including Operation Vulindlela, into that institutional framework. So you need to have an anchor agency that coordinates the planning, the execution, and project management capability, including interventions in the state. So it's not to invent something that has never happened, but it's to improve efficiency. So if you see here on number 20 on public engagement and comms, it includes political education initiatives by the OR Tambo School of Governance on some conceptual issues that, for instance, are debatable. One of the issues that comrades always complain about is the introduction of the language of reforms. Comrades say, how can a revolutionary movement be talking about reforms? What do reforms mean? Is this a sellout position? What does it mean when the revolutionary movement is talking about modernizing SOEs? What are we talking about when we speak about private sector participation? Is it privatization? Is it something else? All of those are going to be articulated through interventions done by the OR Tambo School of Leadership, as we're starting off today, and the ANC DCIP on this front. Now, there's a lot that is contained here, but I was just trying to demonstrate to you the amount of detail that goes into this work that we have done here. On land reform, we want 1 million hectares to be under production, plus 10 agro parks operational. Now, those agro parks, it relates to what I was talking about, trying to reimagine the industrial parks and the work that they do. And we've also done all kinds of risks. There's a tenure conflict. You know, you can say you want 1 million hectares under utilization, but land that is under chiefs and traditional leaders, there's a particular manner in which you can fence it, if at all. There's a particular manner in which you can define the regime of how that land is held in order for you to have the ability to raise capital in order to finance output at that level. But all of those, we've done them. and so on. So thank you very much, Comrade Kifenzi. I didn't want to take too much time and rob people of a chance to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Zuko. If we were in a physical setting, I would say to comrades, let's give you a round of applause, really, for the brilliant presentation that you gave us. Very detailed, very robust, and indeed inspiring, because many a times when we hear things through the media, we only get a taste, right? Or we only get the bones. But today you've given us the full flesh and things begin to make sense. And I think it's important to emphasize the points that you started on, that this is not a wish list. Neither is it a new policy, but it is also steeped and informed by conference resolutions. And I think that's important because we find ourselves wherein we're faced with a lot of challenges across many fronts. And therefore, when we react to these things, we forget what is it that we have resolved on. And sometimes we even forget to check whether our response is in line with the resolutions. But I think you also did a great job in showing us that we're not only responding to domestic issues, we find ourselves in a very volatile geopolitical and economic climate globally. And it's therefore important that in whatever response that we employ to whatever challenge is informed by that reality, that we don't exist in isolation. We exist within a globalized world. And things that happen many miles away from us have an impact on us, whether positive or adverse. I think we also appreciate the fact that you took us through the scorecards and the report cards that have been developed. And I think it would be important that even as we go and engage with other structures, those issues that you have touched on, those report cards, need to be articulated so that when comrades judge the outputs of this plan, they don't judge it based on what media says or what opposition says, but really judge it on the matrix that has been developed. So I truly, truly appreciate that you did that. So without wasting any time, comrades, I'm going to open up a round of hands. There's many of us here. Safe to say, Comrade Zuko, so far you have been speaking to at least 450 people, and there are still more coming in. So we hope the message it will be carried through, and it will not just end in the space. So I'm going to note hands, comrades, and this is how we're going to do it because we have many people. We are going to give each of you 2 minutes each to make your input so that we can allow other comrades to engage, or we can allow as many other comrades to engage. I know that we're dealing with economic matters which tend to be technical, and sometimes some of us tend to be a bit more passionate about them. I mean, even if when we go to conferences, we all know that there's one commission that most people flock to, and that is the Economic Transformation Commission. So I'm going to plead with you, comrades, please go straight to your point. If you have a couple of points, just briefly mention them, be as concise as possible so that we can go through as many hands as possible. So I'm going to take the first round, Comrade Zuko. There are many people, so there's already about 10 hands. So I don't know if I should take all of them or should we do 5-5. And then we'll see if time permits for us to open the second round. So I'll start with Comrade Matthew Parks from COSATU. You can unmute and pose your question.
Thanks, Comrade Chair, and evening, comrades. Thanks to Comrade Zuko. Just two comments. I think one is any economic intervention plan has really got to have two major components, besides all the other many issues that Comrade DM, Comrade Chair mentioned. I think one is really, if you want to grow the economy, to create jobs, you have to have a really ramped up industrial financing package. The amount of money we allocate, be it under DTIC, be it under the DBSA, IDC, etc., for industrialization, for export sectors, or under small business development for SMEs, is just not enough. To allocate 20 billion rand, etc., when you have this, level of economic growth of 1% for the last 20 years, it's just not going to take us far enough. So we really need a really ramped up industrial financing package from the public sector, but also from the private sector as well, the investment banks, the pension funds, etc. Secondly, also you need to have a really ramped up in public employment program. Again, 12 million people unemployed, many young people struggling to find that first job. So we need really to ramp it up. So that's just the two content things. I think the other thing, Comrade Chair, is that I think how this process was done by the ANC puts us as alliance partners in a difficult spot. We have not had proper engagements as COSATU, as the alliance with the document. We had hoped there would have been some discussions. It makes it difficult for us when the ANC makes an announcement, fait accompli, there's been no alliance engagements, puts us in a difficult spot. Do we still have a comment, or is the horse bolted? And then, of course, one can also raise a similar issue for NEDLAC 2, where you would want to engage with social partners, business, labor, etc., on it as well. Makes it difficult. And then it really, if we speak about uniting the alliance, reconfiguring the alliance, makes it difficult. That's how it's done. And again, government can do so much. If it doesn't have business and labor on board, also makes it difficult. Not to say there's not good things there, things that we would agree with too, things we'd have concerns with. But again, Chair, if we're not engaged, it makes it difficult for us and becomes an unnecessary distraction. But let me stop there, Chair, because I understand you kept us to 2 minutes. So hopefully I stuck to that. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Comrade DM.
Thank you very much, Comrade Matthews. I think you stuck to time, and I think other comrades must also follow suit. I have no doubt that there are other NEC members besides Zuko who are here who will take that last comment into consideration. But of course, Comrade Zuko will also respond to that. The next person is Comrade, it's Advocate actually, Advocate Lungisa. You can unmute and go ahead.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks a lot. It's Lungisa here, and I commit to toe the lines. Mine, Chair, will be basically on normally when there's a new innovation that is coming, normally the society would be maybe carried away, if I can use that term in the absence of a better one, to say, considering this innovation, it looks or it sounds very good, and to consider without necessarily dipping down into the risks that are involved. My one question will be, Chair, how best can we drive the global energy transition? That is also the energy democracy and the commons, to ensure that the framework of the just transition is successfully manages the shift to a low carbon and sustainable economy in an inclusive way that would cater for all. I know the DM would have touched on a number of issues, but you'll pardon me if that was dealt with in depth, but that would just basically be my question on the discussion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Advocate Lungisa. The next one is Comrade Cde Zuko. Please follow suit as the two latter speakers did.
Thank you very much, Director of the program, and let me appreciate also the comprehensive presentation by Comrade Zuko. I'm not going to take long. Just one issue. The focus on chrome as one of a myriad of minerals that we are actually exporting outside of the country. Is it a pilot, or are we saying that all these other minerals are fine to be exported raw as they are, so that we export job opportunities? That's my first question. Secondly, it's an impression that I really want to make, that I really appreciate the appreciation around the issue of saying there needs to be that policy a match between, for example, Treasury as well as DTIC in terms of making sure that there is a possibility of industrial financing and also a focus on industrial parks. But on industrialization, really, I would have thought that the document would have gone further to actually identify specific sectors of the economy that we really want to touch upon, because you'll remember that both the conference and the manifesto was detailed in terms of industrialization, but the focus that the document outlines on industrialization leaves a lot to be desired. Lastly, is just an impression that I want to make, that I would have thought that we would not have gone to the point of actually developing another plan when we have a manifesto and we also have resolutions. I don't think that is a very much a clever move politically and ideologically, but we will bow to what the leadership of the ANC says. Lastly, in terms of making sure that we stick to provincial strategies, to what extent will we be then able to ensure that we engage treasury to ensure that there is financing, for example, of industrialization at provincial level, rather than actually making sure that the budget is at national level? Those are the only issues I wanted to raise.
Just on to the 2 minutes mark. Thank you very much, Comrade Cde Zuko. Just quickly, because I'm going to take about 10 hands, so some of the issues maybe Comrade Zuko may forget, but on that issue of the manifesto and resolutions, if you read the last manifesto, it says we'll actually develop plans of how we are going to achieve those manifesto commitments. So I suspect that it is in that context in which that plan is developed, but there is that disclaimer in the manifesto itself. Comrade Xavier, you can unmute and go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity, and very well done to the Deputy Minister Godlimpi. That was very well presented. I'm not actually a comrade. I'm not an ANC member, but I appreciate that you guys opened this up to the public as well. I'm very impressed that the media doesn't actually cover how much work the ANC has put in this. This came as a big shock to me. That said, I don't see the scope for implementation outside the ANC. This is a very good plan, and I can see how it could be followed through. But we have to admit that we're in a government of national unity, and that means some portfolios are shared, portfolios that are central to this plan. So I think there needs to be a little more disclosure, if the Deputy Minister can agree, on how the other parties inside the GNU, through the GNU Lekgotla, and if they were privy to this plan, and if the GNU medium-term plan is in line with this plan. Otherwise, it's two plans running against each other. I also see there's a lot of similarities with parties outside of the GNU that want to accomplish the same things. Has that ever been discussed? Has this plan been put forward to them so that you get less opposition in Parliament? And then my other question was regarding the steel industry. So we're seeing a lot of factories in South Africa close that use quite a bit of the local steel and the Chinese steel. That said, is there any plans from the DTIC and IDC to expand steel usage? At present, it's too focused on the automotive industry, and not enough is done on other consumer products that use a lot of steel. For example, appliances are much easier to open a factory, but I don't see a lot of that happening. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Comrade Xavier. You'll forgive me for referring you to Comrade, but I think it's no harm. It's no harm, and in fact, you're welcome to join the ANC. Comrade Eric Munya, please, Munyai, ne? Yes, Comrade Eric Munyai, the floor is yours. Comrade Eric, you can unmute and go ahead. Comrade Eric, I think we lost Comrade Eric. We'll go to Comrade Stembile.
Yes, Comrade Chair, can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. Yes, Comrade Eric, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair. We thank you very much. Firstly, I need to thank to Deputy Minister Godlimpi, and I'm very much happy about the plan of the ANC that is coming up with, including not even forgetting the GNU itself, government. I would like also to, for the plans and the ANC in the plan for ANC to include also the taxi industry, not forgetting that there is a chance of job creation so much that is not seen by many people, that taxi industry can create more jobs for the young generation and incoming leaders. So I would like next time, my leader and chairperson, that you don't have to forget about the taxi industry as it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Eric. Comrades, you are doing so well. You know, if we are consistent, we'll actually take more hands. Comrade Stembile Mapu, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. And firstly, I'd like to welcome the presentation from Comrade Zuko, and also taking us through the detail in terms of the scorecard. I think it's certainly quite comprehensive and well thought out. I think my comments are mainly on going to be on the energy side, as well as the interventions that are made on the industrialization side. I think the comparisons that have been made, especially around China and South Africa, and the cost of power per kilowatt hour. I think if you look at China and their focus on baseload production is mainly driven by the reliance on coal. And I understand the balancing act, Comrade Zuko, that needs to be done around renewables and baseload. But I think there needs to be, I think, more emphasis on baseload production, so that we can get the cost of power down, so that we can achieve that those efficiencies that we need to achieve there. And then I think that for me can only be done by us boldly pronouncing on what needs to be done in terms of coal beneficiation, and there are solutions that are available around clean coal technology that are being investigated by even state-owned companies that I think should be explored, so that we can achieve those efficiencies that side. The crisis I think we have that we're not addressing around energy generation is around the green lobby, which is European funded, which is against coal, it's against gas, it's against nuclear. And I think for me, that's a gap that I see that we're not addressing in this plan. And I can give you a practical example, and I think you're aware of the plan.
Comrade Stembile, I'm sure you had the time.
Yeah, no,
so
I'm still within the 2 minutes.
I don't know. The time has run. So I think we've gotten your point. I'm going to move to Comrade Mbulelo. Comrade Mbulelo, the floor is yours.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I was struggling to unmute. Chair, I've just posted because I was worried about the time. I've just posted, actually, the only thing I wanted to find out first, thanks for the presentation. Thanks, Chairperson and the DM. So my question is straightforward. One of the long-standing challenges facing South African development finance system is the fragmentation and lack of coordination amongst the national and provincial government departments and the DFIs. So I just wanted the DM maybe to try and elaborate on how government is addressing this institutional fragmentation. Specifically, how is the state ensuring policy coherence, shared development targets, and better alignment between DFIs and broader national priorities such as industrialization and the issue of the energy now? I've just posted the question on the chat group. Chair, I'm not sure if you are able to see it because I was struggling to unmute when you noted me. So
Yeah,
thanks.
I see it, Mbu. I see the question.
Thanks very much for the presentation. And I wish that this could really be extended much broader, because there's a lot of work, there's a lot of things and made in terms of what the organization is doing, which, as other comrades alluded to, that perhaps the mainstream media is actually not highlighting these issues. Yeah. So, yeah, I've just posted the question there. I'll leave it there. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Comrade Mbulelo. Comrade Caesar Pam.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And thanks to the DM for the comprehensive presentation. You know, mine, Chair, is very direct. I think, as a member of the ANC and as I was listening to the presentation, I just wanted to check with the DM that how do we, in our own organization, because we're complaining about also that there's a lack of proper reporting from the South African media, but how do we raise consciousness and improve the quality of our conversations? Because the subject matter is a highly technical matter, as the chair had alluded earlier on, but how do we improve the quality of the conversation and raise knowledge and levels of consciousness on the same issues? Because at the local government level, the lack thereof has got a direct impact. I mean, you see that other than the issues of project management and state capacity, there's also serious disparities in terms of the appreciation of the actual subject matter in our structures and by extension, whoever that we elect in various municipalities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Caesar. The next comrade is going to be Comrade Paul. You can unmute and go ahead.
Thank you very much, comrade. Thanks for the presentation. Mine, it will be on the issue of a bill on economy, especially when it comes to township. I want to check how far are we, comrades. There's in Gauteng, because it's where I stay, in Cde. My branch is Alina Rentulasi. There is a bill called the Gauteng Township Economy, where all municipalities must implement. I want to check how far are we, comrade. Another one is this, what's it called, the special economic zones. Comrade, I don't know where do you ever see so far all municipality to address this issue. I want to, comrade, assist me in relation to special economic zone, especially when it comes to local municipality. Comrades, there is this issue of health insurance fund. I want to check because, comrades, We need to move. I think the presentation should also indicate in relation to these challenges. Comrades, there is this thing called indigent application form, whereby all municipalities submit to either, I don't know, is it provincially or nationally in relation to making those funds available if they are. And also, comrade, please assist me just to check how far are we with a pharmaceutical company. There is a bank company, or we need to go into so far. How far are we into that? Because, comrades, when we come or report to the national policy conference come December, we need to take those routes to say, as much as we are having challenges internationally, also in the continent, but we need to make sure also where we are in terms of all spheres of government, we feel what is budgeted for when it comes to treasury, because I think our budget now is running at over $1 trillion.
Comrade Dimpo, thank you very much. Thank you very much. The next comrade is Mohammed Raisin Dago. Yeah, I think Dago. Yes. Please unmute. I hope I did not butcher your name. If I did, please forgive me.
Thank you very much, comrade. I only have one comment and one question. The ANC is not devoid of intellectual capacity, great plans, outstanding plans. I think the comment I want to make is the failure of execution and the failure of delivery. I think we need to be really critical about actual delivery, because when we fail in execution, we fail strategically. And I agree with Comrade Zuko around the professionalization, around the program and project managers and engineers actually beginning to do work within communities at a local level. And then, comrades, one of the big things that I think there's a gap in all of the policy documents and in all of the intellectual documents we've put forward is the gap of how we address the fifth industrial revolution and how we're going to respond to that from a country perspective. And finally, I made a comment, and I hope that the comments get fed into the rest of the policy documents around the phenomenal technology capability in the financial services sector. And I do believe we need to develop a state bank that is highly technological, and maybe transform the post bank to be that, or the post office. Thank you, comrades. That's my submission.
Thank you very much, Comrade Raisin. The last hand that I'm taking is Comrade Peterson. Please go ahead. Comrade Peterson, please unmute. Comrade Peterson?
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is just simple. I just want to ask Comrade Zuko. Thank you for the presentation. I joined very late, but the plan calls for a fiscal, monetary, and trade and industry policy. Given the different mandates between the central bank and the government, and the situation that we are facing now, which is GNU, how do we plan to handle conflict in the future? And then the last one from my side, what are the mechanisms in place to monitor this beautiful plan that we've come up with? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Comrade Peterson. In light of the fact that you stuck to time, Comrade Zuko, can I just take these last four heads, ending with Comrade Letolo, and I'm going to plead that they stick to time, and then you'll respond to all of the hands, and maybe we'll see if we can open the last round. So, Comrade Sandile, please go ahead.
Comrade Chair, thank you very much. I'm going to try and be short. Comrade Chair, thank you, Comrade Zuko, for the presentation. firstly, you spoke about the industrial parks. And I think the functionality of these parks would be very much helpful in terms of the beneficiation that we've been speaking about as the African National Congress. I have not heard you speak about it in this presentation, and I wonder extensively, and I wonder where does it fit and how do we want to ensure that it is implemented. It's been resolved in conferences before, but its implementation is very low according to me. Secondly, in the examples you've been making, you speak of China, US. What is happening in terms of intra-Africa trade? Are we ever going in that direction? But also, we've been taking coal out of the country for a very good time, tons and tons, because I spend a lot of time in that bend of Richards Bay, and I've seen a lot of coal going out. What do these countries do to the coal? Don't they ban it? If they are banning it, what is the difference with us banning our own coal and increasing our own beneficiation? I think the last thing I would like to also say is that may we have this presentation and the spreadsheet that you showed, so that when we discuss it in our branches, we can be able to refer to it. The last one, formation of pharmaceutical company. Where are we and what is it that we are doing about it? It is going to definitely reduce our expenditure on health in many ways, whether we have or we don't have NHI. Thank you very much, Comrade Chair.
Comrade Sandile, thank you very much. Comrade Mpilo, please. Yeah, please unmute. Sure, go ahead.
Oh, no, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much to Comrade Zuko. Excuse me. So I just want to know clarification in implementation of number 6, which is labor activation initiatives and SMME supports, because when I look at the responsibilities, so the departments that are going to be responsible for this implementation, one critical entity in South Africa, which is the South African Reserve Bank, I see it missing there. And I'm saying that because it has the power to do what is called targeted credit support. And that is for projects and also initiatives that are deemed to have potential job creation in society. And we saw in 2020 whereby the central bank was actually able to offer these credit supports to make sure that SMMEs are not failing, but also to make sure that we have, for example, now what we call the SRD grant. So in terms of implementation, as you can see, that SMME support is one of the most critical aspects of initiative that can create job creation. Where are we in terms of making sure that we do plug the Reserve Bank into these initiatives, or are we keeping the conservative monetary policy in terms of how the Reserve Bank contributes, when it comes to the economy? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Mpilo. Comrade Malwande. No, it's Comrade Sigelela. Oh, sorry, Comrade Sigelela. Please unmute and go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chairperson, and thank you to UDM for such an engaging presentation. I wasn't sure if the session would have allowed a platform like this. I had posted in the chat. I'm looking to see, I don't know if maybe I was answered along the way because I was also driving, so I might have lost attention. But in any case, I wanted to find out, I see that most of the economic policies aimed at looking at, in terms of beneficiating our resources and other things, I don't see any considerations in terms of future energy sources, because what you'll see, most countries are looking at the demands around AI and the Internet of Things. And you found that many countries are making some sort of revenues that are coming through in terms of hosting data centers within respective economic zones. I didn't see something along those lines. Is there something maybe if UDM can try and direct us if there is a particular document that's also looking at concentrating at other energy sources besides what we're used to, if I could say that. I'm asking because I was looking at an interview with Botswana's president not so long ago, where they were looking at trying to find other ways in terms of trying to exploit things around AI and the fourth industrial revolution, because they've seen that the demand of natural raw materials, in their case diamonds, has started to slow down a bit, and prices of synthetic diamonds has started to go up, and most people are starting to prefer those instead of the originally mined diamonds. So they've seen a decrease in terms of their fiscus around raising revenues in that way. Is there consideration for other revenue sources like that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Sigelela. The last hand is Comrade Letsulu Mojanaga. Please unmute, Comrade Letsulu. Comrade Letsulu?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I was struggling to unmute. Thank you very much, Comrade, and for a good presentation. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think that we can discuss, but I think for the sake of time, I will just maybe highlight 3 issues and maybe 2 recommendations. One, I think we should not be under any illusion that developed countries have actually abandoned industrial policy. Silicon Valley is a classical example of industrial policy in the US. You know, we know how the developing countries have been circumventing the WTO rules using non-tariff barriers, subsidies, and standards to actually support their own industry. So we should not be under any illusion that they are only industrializing now behind the walls. This has been going on forever. And the second thing, it will be, thanks, Comrade Godlimpi, emphasizing a public employment program, because our South African economy is suffering from deficient aggregate demand. It is clear because not enough people are employed. So therefore, that's why I think we're suffering. And I think this is quite critical that the public employment program will be able to do that. But we need to look at where we want to put the income. You know, I think the level where we are putting this public employment program, the income and the salary that we are providing is not sufficient enough to actually to spur economic growth and increase demand for services and goods so that we can build factories to respond to that. So I think the issue of the minimum wage around public employment program needs to be looked at. And I know that people talk about how we're going to fund this. I'm of a firm belief that I think there should be a very close coordination between monetary and fiscal policy. We know about the independence of the Reserve Bank and everything like that, but we know that this is not true. All over the world, monetary, fiscal policy and monetary policy are always being coordinated. And government can actually just did during COVID. When the COVID package, when the Reserve Bank went to the secondary bond market to support government, you know, with the $20 billion US dollar, I don't know how much was it.
Yes. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you very much, comrades, for your questions and comments. Very rich, very relevant, and thank you for sticking to time. My tally tells me that I've taken 15 hands. And if you look at the time, it makes sense because we started taking hands at 7 o'clock. Now we are at 1934. So I'm going to give it back to Comrade Zuko to give us some responses. And we'll see if we're able to take the last round. So Comrade Zuko, please do go ahead and respond to those questions and comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, comrades. I think part of what has now emerged for me is that the ANC has a discipline problem. Discipline in paying attention to detail. And the reason I say this is because some of the questions being posed here are contained in the presentation. Either people arrived late or they didn't. But yeah, and I'm saying this is a tongue in cheek. I'm not trying to offend anybody. I was just making a point that our movement has this little thing. So, Comrade Matthew Parks, I agree. Industrial financing, as you were saying, it's true. It's there in the presentation. So when the presentation talks about a national DFI coordinating framework, it is to deal with the industrial financing problem. The second part, when you speak about number 10, that says macroeconomic coordination between fiscal, monetary, and industrial policy, it is precisely to address the industrial financing gap. There's an under-allocation on that front. As I was saying when I started, it's because when the National Treasury thinks about macroeconomic stability, it has historically gone a different direction to the demands of industrial policy. So that's the point that I was making. That's what we're aiming to address with those points. If you read those 10 points, I urge comrades to read them as being articulated as talking to each other. None must be read in isolation. So answers in interpreting one area of intervention are contained in another at times. The second issue on the alliance consultation, Comrade Matthew Parks, I'm shocked because one of the people who insisted that we needed a brief economic action plan was you in our ETC discussion from COSATU. It was a COSATU view that we need to systematically put. But I agree with you that on the performance scorecard, that's why I'm not going to share it with anybody. That one is not coming. You'll get the main presentation. We still have to get into that detail with our alliance partners so that we can concretize those areas. Suffice to say, and I think this is a response to someone else, I just don't remember, it could have been T-Sets. T-Sets, so this is not a new plan, and I'd explained this point when I started. This, in the presentation, I demonstrate the relationship between an intervention area and 55th National Conference resolutions and the ANC manifesto. This is an action plan to concretize the manifesto, not to create it. So this is not a new macroeconomic plan. If you notice number 10, that says macroeconomic coordination. It doesn't announce a macroeconomic strategy as well, because that work is work that still needs to be finalized. It just says for all of this to succeed, that alignment needs to be done. Xavier, I see what you are saying there. It will come, but not now. The reason I'm saying I won't send it to you now is because there's a bit of consultative work that must be done to get it done. One question you asked, Xavier, which is important, is on the how does this relate to the MTPP? It's essentially going to the MTPP. So if you read the ANC statement of intent and read the GNU statement of intent, it intimates these things, and the MTPP is built at the back of this. And there was a relationship between the substance of the ANC manifesto and the MTPP itself. So most of these things, in fact, one of the things I saw last week is that after the president spoke, the DA released a statement saying it agrees with the action plan, but of course it complained about some elements of it on ideological grounds. They said transformation, they didn't agree with it, blah, 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 and so on. But the test is on whether this translates into the MTPP. As I'm saying, we will take it to the government Lekgotla on the 22nd of October. But a lot of it has already been embedded in the MTPP, as it were. Any plans to expand steel use beyond auto sector? Yes, Xavier, as I was saying, the interventions around the electricity tariff and the chrome is to create the availability of inputs in the domestic steel industry. And the intention is to provide the availability of sufficiently priced steel such that we should be in a position to use steel for other sectors beyond the auto sector. So that is the grand strategy on that one. Stembile, so I agree with the thrust of what you were saying with respect to the baseload question. So the energy mix is not about supplanting coal entirely. Coal will remain very key to our baseload, but the issue is about the diversification element in order to address that which I was raising as a CBAM thing. So you're correct. The future of electricity generation in South Africa includes coal as a central component of it. So there must be no illusion that it will go away. I think in part I will also answer. So you're raising the green lobby thing as well, Steve. We can't write that on an action plan. We can't say there's a green lobby and therefore what. The point is that we will do all that is necessary in order to stabilize energy availability in South Africa, including whatever we need to do against the. So we're not going to specify it out here that there's this problem. Umbulelo, I wanted to make a joke, but I won't. I realized that you are asking me questions in preparation for your dissertation because that question, it sounds like your research question. But you are correct. So that the two elements here that speak to your research question, it's the one about the National DFI Coordinating Council and the provincial growth plans and the industrial park. So part of what we're trying to do is to have this statewide articulation of the public sector balance sheet that is held by DFIs and how it is articulated. For instance, let me use the example of what I know because I worked in the Eastern Cape. I have a clear sense of how it works. And I will also answer Comrade Twabu as well on this question. So part of the problem you have with what we're trying to do with rural agriculture in the Eastern Cape, we tried to use the red hubs to support the rural agriculture. And the red hubs were relying mostly on capital being injected by the Eastern Cape Rural Development Agency. But the capacity of that agency is very limited. We need to think about provincial agencies providing seed capital or assisting with non-financial support to help those initiatives to have the capacity to raise capital in other DFIs. So there must be an articulated relationship between the ECRDA, the NEF, the ITC, blah, 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 depending on the scale and the scope that a particular initiative is taking. So very central to that DFI Coordinating Council is to also bring on board, in those provincial growth plans, to bring on board the public agencies related to dispersing capital that are in provinces. Sisa, you are asking a question, how do we popularize these things? You know, Donald Trump won the last election purely at the back of podcasts. So he has this thing where he says mainstream media is fake news media, so they've run to podcasts. We underestimate the need for ANC comrades to produce their own media and articulate ANC policy in those platforms. You don't have to rely on sound bites and newspaper people doing that. In the age of WhatsApp videos, in the age of Facebook, in the age of TikTok, it's very easy for us to record our own podcasts, explaining our positions and popularizing those clips on social media to counter whatever negative reporting we might be complaining about. Mpo raises the point of how far is implementation, Gauteng, township economy, SEZ, etc. So there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that is being done on that front, and I've received some input from the comrades of Gauteng on this So the Township Economic Development Act, it exists as a law. It has already been developed. There's work that is being done, of course, to provide support through your Gauteng Economic Propeller and other agencies in Gauteng to support businesses that are at that level. But part of what it will do, it intersects with this plan in the context of what I was saying, the revival of industrial parks. Most of these industrial parks are in townships. So what we want to do is to reinforce the work being done by the Township Economic Development Agency by linking it up with some of the programs and initiatives that exist in other national DFIs. So for instance, some of the work that the Township Economic Development Agency does is related to the work that the NEF does. But sometimes they work at cross purposes with each other because there is no institutional coordination. So that's what I was explaining. Someone asked a question about whether the chrome and manganese thing is at the landing point. It's a test case. It would be an absurdity if we woke up tomorrow and said, we are imposing export controls on every mineral, because we would not have done the technical work necessary to build capacity to utilize them for productivity growth in South Africa. So we're using this as a test case, and then we'll incrementally do something similar to most other of our minerals. Dango, I agree with you, failure of execution. It's failure of execution, yes, but part of what has been a failure is that we would pronounce objectives. We want to achieve this, this, and that. And we would hardly ever disaggregate it into measurable deliverables and outputs. So as you see here, we've included timelines that are both short-term, medium-term, and so on. And we're clear about what action must be undertaken over what time horizon. So it is easy to force execution at that level. If someone knows that in the next 3 months, I have an obligation to do this, that, and the other, if they don't do it, then we know how to hold them accountable, because it is a part of this thing that is here. Gobani, you were saying, I think what you were asking, I'll also answer Umpilo on that one, what I said. So on macroeconomic coordination, it includes modeling how do we align that with the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank, including what you are raising as how do we handle conflict. So if you paid attention recently, there was a bit of a storm when the Reserve Bank governor went out and said the Reserve Bank wants to reduce, wants to change the inflation, the monetary policy regime of inflation targeting from a 3 to 6% range towards a hard target of 3%. And the Minister of Finance issued a statement explaining that resides with the authority of the Minister of Finance, whether to change this and that. So it's part of that work of managing the friction in order to do that alignment. But the Minister of Finance will eventually make a public statement on this question in order to then make a case about whatever monetary policy framework that he will be announcing. It must be measured on the extent to which it has the ability to support industrial policy. That's what that area of coordination talks about. Now, below, you say on labor activation, we don't talk about the SARP. We don't talk about it there because we speak about it on the macroeconomic coordination. When we say alignment of fiscal, monetary, and industrial policy, we're essentially speaking about that re-articulation of the mandate of the South African Reserve Bank to support employment creation. And if you read the discussion documents of the NGC, that point is made in much more detail on that score. Sigalela, we are talking about the 4IR. Sure. Of course, the case we're using is because of the synthetic diamonds issue in Brazil. Part of what our industrial policy addresses in detail, and that document is also going to be available. It addresses the technology question and investment in technology infrastructure and including the 4IR and so on. So I see someone says none of ANC documents talk of the 5IR and so on. It's not true. The one of the development of the state bank, it's there in this thing that I just presented here. In the presentation, the issue about the state bank, it is there. That the post bank, of course, we don't get into the detail of what to do with the post bank, but there's work that is being done on that front already. Remember, the Post Bank has now been separated from the post office. It has a board, it has an executive, there's work being done on building it as a basis of building the state bank. That work is there. It's similar to the question that keeps coming up about the state pharmaceutical company. It's there, it has already been built, comrades. There are just other operational problems there. So we have the state pharmaceutical company. We also have the state mining company. The problem is there are operational weaknesses there that we're attending to so that they could assume a greater market share in their respective sectors of the economy. But that work has already been done. Abuti Lichilo makes a point that there must be no illusion that industrial policy has ever left. And that illusion does not exist. We're making the case there that although the US historically paid particular rhetorical homage to the decline of industrial policy, and in effect, after the development of Silicon Valley, they allowed it to peter out since 1980 coming. So in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Silicon Valley was sustained by a lot of industrial policy activity from the US administration. But since President Reagan in 1980, they started to deregulate a lot and slow down on industrial policy. That is how the Chinese have come to eat their lunch on the scope of technology and so on. But what they've now done is to abandon that rhetoric, and they have essentially brought it back full steam. There's been no major industrial policy package in the US greater than, since the earlier periods, than the Inflation Reduction Act and the Chips and Science Act that President Biden brought in 2020. So that was essentially the US now no longer paying attention to the WTO and essentially just going that route open. So the point we're making was, even those domestic critics who have been saying industrial policy has no scope because they would cite the West, they now must know that everybody is now openly engaging industrial policy, no longer doing it through creativity. They are openly doing it as part of their grammar of policy articulation. And as I was explaining earlier, the carbon border adjustment measures by the European Union is industrial policy, even though they are bringing it in under the guise of climate justice politics, but it is substantively industrial policy in action. That's the point that I was making. Now, comrades, you've all sent your emails. The OR Tambo School of Leadership is going to send you the presentation that I made. The reason I said I'm not going to send you the scorecards and so on, it's because, as I was saying, there's still some consultative work that must be done and refinement. But otherwise, these documents will all be made public. What we intend on doing, and we've asked some of the more tech-savvy comrades we work with and some of our engineers to develop a live platform where these things could be tracked as well. And I must make the point so that whoever wishes to understand how do we arrive at this thing. The Economic Transformation Committee of the ANC has an Economic Transformation Committee technical support team. And that team has 2 PhDs in engineering, one from MIT, one from Oxford. It has about 5 PhDs in economics and economics in different areas of specialization. Some are professors of econometrics, some are professors of economics. Fortunately, I grew up with many of them. So I'm not talking about people I don't know. I know them. Many of them are university lecturers. It has civil engineers as well. We have quantity surveyors as well. We have people who do work in project management. We have people who work in finance. We have people who work in the state. So we have quite a sizable team that has been working on this thing that we've produced. It's not as though someone sat in some corner and was driven by ideological delusions and then generated this thing. This work of translating conference resolutions and the manifesto into a workable plan, it included a lot of technical work and modeling there too. And that work does not stop. We keep on doing that. We keep on doing that. So there must be no fear that none of this has been done. And that modeling still continues. And of course, because it's an implementation plan, it will probably change as new developments play out in the global economy, some shocks happen, and some feed-in data comes in to improve the work that we're doing. With that, thank you very much, comrades. It's been lovely talking to you. the conversation does not end here. The ANC Communications, the DCIP, is going to run a podcast series on this action plan. The Political Education Subcommittee and the Organizing Subcommittee are going to do regional and provincial general councils related to this action plan as part of the work of going towards the National General Council. And this work is not going to stop because that is part of the implementation plan itself. The OR Tambo School of Leadership will also keep on running similar things on specific areas of this plan. So this was just a curtain raiser of the work that we're doing. But overall, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And also, when I'm here, I didn't come here as DM. I'm chairperson of the ETC because you're going to start accusing me of things that don't exist. I'm speaking here as chairperson of the ETC. The DM of Trade and Industry will speak some other time, probably next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Comrade Zuko. I think this was a very brilliant, phenomenal, and very inspiring curtain raiser. Sometimes we forget that indeed the ANC has a lot of capability to achieve its historical mission to advance the national democratic revolution in order to build a better life for all South Africans. And this is because there's a lot of things that are happening in the country, and the media is also not patriotic enough to tell the good stories that are there. So we get fed with this negativity such that it also makes us pessimistic. It also makes us believe that there's nothing good that is happening. Some even believe that there's nothing good that can come out of the ANC and its current leadership, and these are ANC members. And this is precisely because we don't create enough platforms to go into detail about this good work that has been done. So thank you so much for really inspiring hope. I hope comrades who joined us today will leave here more inspired, more reinvigorated, more re-energized, and more zealous about all the work that the ANC is doing. And also go and empower other comrades who are probably on the brink of despondency to say, it is not all gloom and bad. There's positive, impactful work that has been done, and we need to support that work. So thank you so much, Comrade Zuko, and we wish you and your team all the best in implementing this plan, both from a political level, but also from the government side of things, because it would mean nothing if it's just a plan. And we come here next year, we find that when we look at that report card, not much has been done. It will only mean something if indeed it translates into impactful action that changes people's lives for the better. With that said, I would also like to thank all the participants, comrades, friends, ordinary people. Thank you so much for joining in. The highest number that I've seen of participants was at around 460, 65 people. And we truly appreciate you taking your time to be part of these sessions. Today was a starting point, and I think we started on a good note. We've received all of your emails. We'll send you information about future dialogues. The presentation has been shared in the chat room, but we'll also share it via email. I'll have a discussion with Comrade Zuko whether or not when we share this recording on our YouTube channel, what is it that we must take out, if anything. But it will be shared on our YouTube channel. As you all know, comrades, in the calendar of the ANC, this is OR Tambo month. October is dedicated to OR Tambo month. And as the OR Tambo School of Leadership, we are running a number of campaigns in commemorating and honoring the legacy of President Oliver Tambo. And this is part of that commemoration. Hence, we chose to resume these public dialogues as part of that commemoration. But there's also a number of campaigns that we're running. If you go to our social media pages, you will see that we're running a campaign, a digital campaign with infographics just detailing some of the work that President OR Tambo has done. On the 23rd, that is next week, we're having a public lecture dedicated to honoring President Oliver Tambo's legacy of leadership at Cosatu House. So we're making that announcement tomorrow on our social media platforms. Please be on the lookout. It's a very exciting lecture that is coming up. And there will also be other programs that are exciting. So we really implore you to follow us, pay attention to the communications we make, but also to partake in that campaign, month-long campaign to commemorate the legacy of President Oliver Tambo, who is the longest-serving ANC president since its formation. And we all know the role that he played in winning us this freedom that we enjoy today. So we really appreciate it, comrades. The other announcement is that moving forward, what we will be focusing on in these public dialogues are thematic areas contained in the NGC base document. So we'll be having comrades as well as members of society from all sectors, academia, business, the labor movement, civil society, to discuss those issues that are in the base document. We all know that in December, we are heading for an NGC. And it's a very important NGC because it will be assessing the strategy and tactics in particular of the African National Congress, but also reviewing the work that has been done since the 55th National Conference in 2022. So it's important that as we prepare ourselves for that NGC, we engage with the propositions that the NEC has given us through that base document. But not only ourselves as ANC members, but it must be a discussion of the rest of society across all sectors. Because if we say we're a leader of society, we can't be conversing and dialoguing alone as the ANC. We need to be outward looking in terms of our dialoguing so that the ideas that are being proposed can also give us some mileage in the battle of ideas. And we're able to be pace setters and trendsetters in as far as ideas are concerned in society. So really, really, comrades, we truly appreciate your presence. The conversation indeed, as Comrade Zuko Godlimpi said, must not end here. Let us multiply this conversation. We'll see you next time on Monday, same time, same platform. Thank you very much and have a good night.